The cold December wind howled through the streets of Washington, D.C., cutting through the ragged layers of clothing that barely shielded Sergeant Amanda Carter from the relentless chill. Once a proud soldier who had served in Afghanistan, Amanda now found herself sleeping on the streets, her only companions a worn-out backpack and a tattered military jacket that still bore the insignia of the U.S. Army. She had enlisted at 19, eager to serve her country. Tours in Afghanistan had tested her courage, but she had fought bravely, saving lives and earning medals. But war leaves scars, and not all of them are visible. After her honorable discharge, she struggled with PTSD, the nightmares stealing her sleep. Civilian life felt alien, jobs were hard to come by, and medical bills piled up. With no family to turn to, Amanda soon lost everything: her job, her apartment, and, worst of all, her dignity. Now she spent her days in Lafayette Park, across from the White House, watching the world pass her by. Tourists, politicians, and businessmen walked past her, never sparing a glance at the homeless veteran who had once fought for their freedom. One evening, as the Christmas lights flickered in the distance and the city buzzed with festive cheer, Amanda huddled in a corner of the park, her stomach growling from hunger. A small, frayed sign rested beside her. Veteran, homeless, hungry, please help. Most people ignored her. A few dropped coins into her tin cup, but no one really saw her. No one ever asked her name, her story, or how she had ended up on these streets. Until that night, a convoy of black SUVs rolled past, stopping at a nearby intersection. Amanda barely noticed. Officials and politicians were a common sight here. But when the door of the lead vehicle opened, she heard footsteps approaching. "Ma'am?" a deep voice called. Amanda looked up, squinting against the streetlights. A tall man in a dark suit stood before her, flanked by Secret Service agents. And then, she recognized him. The man who had dominated the news, the man people either adored or despised, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. She blinked, convinced she was hallucinating. Mr. President?" she stammered, her voice weak from exhaustion. Trump studied her for a moment. His expression, usually sharp and commanding, softened. "What's your name?" "Amanda." "Sergeant Amanda Carter," she said, straightening slightly, the soldier in her instinctively responding. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Sergeant Carter, why are you out here?" She hesitated. No one had ever asked. "Because the world forgot about me," she whispered. There was silence. Then Trump extended a hand. "Not anymore." Amanda hesitated before taking the president's outstretched hand. Her fingers, cold and trembling, brushed against his firm grip. It had been a long time since anyone had touched her with kindness. For months, people had walked by as if she were invisible, nothing more than another forgotten soul on the streets. Donald Trump didn't let go immediately. He studied her as if trying to understand how a woman who had once worn the uniform with pride had ended up here, broken, abandoned. The wind swept around them, but Amanda felt a strange warmth in that moment. "How long have you been out here?" he asked, his voice quieter but still carrying authority. "Almost a year," Amanda admitted. "I tried. I really tried. But when you come home and no one's waiting," her voice cracked and she swallowed hard. "It's easy to disappear." Trump's expression shifted, part concern, part determination. He turned to one of the Secret Service agents and gestured. "Get her inside. Now." Amanda's heart pounded in her chest. "Sir, I can't just." "Yes, you can," Trump interrupted. "You served this country. Now it's time someone serves you." Within moments, Amanda found herself ushered into the warmth of the presidential limousine. The plush leather seats were a stark contrast to the cold pavement she had called home. The smell of leather and fresh coffee filled the air, a world apart from the grimy streets she had grown used to. As the convoy began moving, Trump settled across from her. "What happened after your service?" Amanda took a breath. "I was in Afghanistan for 3 tours. I lost friends. I saw things I still can't forget." She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I got home, it wasn't the same. I tried to find work, but no one wanted to hire a soldier who jumps at loud noises. My medical bills piled up. I fell behind on rent. After a while, the world just gave up on me." For a moment, there was silence. Amanda wondered if she had said too much. I don't like the sound of that, Trump said finally, his tone firm. No one who's worn the uniform should be left behind. Not on my watch. Amanda blinked back tears. She had heard promises before, empty words from people who claimed to care. But this felt different. You got a place to stay tonight? He asked. Amanda shook her head, ashamed. I usually sleep near the park. It's safe, mostly. Not anymore, Trump said, reaching for his phone. Within seconds, he was speaking to someone, direct, no nonsense. I want a room for Sergeant Carter. Tonight. At Trump International. And get my team on the phone, we're fixing this. Amanda could hardly believe what she was hearing. For the first time in a long time, someone was fighting for her. Someone who wouldn't let her slip through the cracks. As the limousine pulled up in front of Trump International Hotel, Amanda felt tears sting her eyes. She had walked past this building many times, marveling at its grandeur. Now she was stepping inside, not as a forgotten veteran, but as someone who mattered. The staff moved swiftly under the president's orders. Within minutes, Amanda stood in a luxurious suite that felt like another world. A soft bed, warm lights, and the promise of a hot meal. All things she had once taken for granted. Before he left, Trump turned back to her. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we start fixing this mess. You've given enough to this country. It's time you get something back. Amanda didn't know what to say. The words caught in her throat, but she managed one phrase through her tears. Thank you, Mr. President. He gave a slight nod. It's the least I can do. As the door closed behind him, Amanda sat down on the edge of the bed, still trying to process what had just happened. For the first time in a long time, hope flickered in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change forever. The first rays of dawn streamed through the tall windows of Amanda's hotel suite. For the first time in nearly a year, she woke up warm, her body sinking into the softest bed she had ever known. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream. But as she opened her eyes and glanced around the elegant room, the marble countertops, the gold accents, it all felt real. A knock at the door pulled her out of her thoughts. Room service, ma'am, a voice called. Amanda hesitated before opening the door. A hotel attendant wheeled in a silver tray laden with eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, and steaming coffee. The rich aroma filled the room, making her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. Courtesy of the president, the attendant said with a smile before leaving. As she sat down to eat, Amanda couldn't help but wonder, why? Why had he stopped for her? Of all the people on those cold streets, what had made him care? Her questions were interrupted by the ringing of the hotel phone. With a nervous breath, she picked it up. Sergeant Carter, came a familiar voice. Yes, sir, she said, instinctively sitting straighter. It's Donald, he replied casually. Hope you slept well. I've got someone who wants to meet you. Can you come downstairs? Amanda's heart pounded. Of course, sir. She quickly showered, letting the hot water wash away the grime and exhaustion of the past year. For the first time in months, she felt like herself again, a soldier, not a shadow. When she stepped into the hotel lobby, 2 Secret Service agents were waiting. Without a word, they led her to a private conference room. As the doors swung open, Amanda's breath caught. Donald Trump stood at the head of the table, but he wasn't alone. Several men and women in suits, their faces serious but kind, turned to look at her. Come in, Sergeant, Trump said, waving her over. We're here to fix your life. Amanda swallowed hard as she took a seat. The president leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. I'm not a fan of seeing our veterans treated this way. You gave your all for this country, now it's our turn. A woman with a warm smile spoke next. I'm from the Department of Veterans Affairs. We're going to ensure you get the medical care you deserve, both physical and mental. A man in a sharp navy suit added, I run a veterans employment program. We can match you with a job that fits your skills. You served your country, you've got value, and we're going to make sure employers see that. Amanda's hands trembled in her lap. Was this really happening? After so many doors had closed in her face, here she was, sitting with the most powerful man in the country, and he was opening every door she thought had been locked forever. Trump leaned back, his voice softer but still commanding. This isn't charity. You earned this by serving our country. I don't leave my people behind. The first rays of dawn streamed through the tall windows of Amanda's hotel suite. For the first time in nearly a year, she woke up warm, her body sinking into the softest bed she had ever known. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream. But as she opened her eyes and glanced around the elegant room, the marble countertops, the gold accents, it all felt real. A knock at the door pulled her out of her thoughts. Room service, ma'am, a voice called. Amanda hesitated before opening the door. A hotel attendant wheeled in a silver tray laden with eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, and steaming coffee. The rich aroma filled the room, making her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. Courtesy of the president, the attendant said with a smile before leaving. As she sat down to eat, Amanda couldn't help but wonder, why? Why had he stopped for her? Of all the people on those cold streets, what had made him care? Her questions were interrupted by the ringing of the hotel phone. With a nervous breath, she picked it up. "Sergeant Carter?" came a familiar voice. "Yes, sir," she said, instinctively sitting straighter. "It's Donald," he replied casually. "Hope you slept well. I've got someone who wants to meet you. Can you come downstairs?" Amanda's heart pounded. "Of course, sir." She quickly showered, letting the hot water wash away the grime and exhaustion of the past year. For the first time in months, she felt like herself again, a soldier, not a shadow. When she stepped into the hotel lobby, 2 Secret Service agents were waiting. Without a word, they led her to a private conference room. As the doors swung open, Amanda's breath caught. Donald Trump stood at the head of the table, but he wasn't alone. Several men and women in suits, their faces serious but kind, turned to look at her. "Come in, Sergeant," Trump said, waving her over. "We're here to fix your life." Amanda swallowed hard as she took a seat. The president leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. "I'm not a fan of seeing our veterans treated this way. You gave your all for this country, now it's our turn." A woman with a warm smile spoke next. "I'm from the Department of Veterans Affairs. We're going to ensure you get the medical care you deserve, both physical and mental." A man in a sharp navy suit added, "I run a veterans employment program. We can match you with a job that fits your skills. You served your country, you've got value, and we're going to make sure employers see that." Amanda's hands trembled in her lap. Was this really happening? After so many doors had closed in her face, here she was, sitting with the most powerful man in the country, and he was opening every door she thought had been locked forever. Trump leaned back, his voice softer but still commanding. "This isn't charity. You earned this by serving our country. I don't leave my people behind." Over the next few weeks, Amanda's life transformed in ways she never thought possible. True to his word, President Trump had mobilized resources to ensure she had every opportunity to rebuild her life. What had once seemed like a hopeless spiral now felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. Amanda moved into a fully furnished apartment just outside Washington, D.C., funded through a special veterans housing initiative. For the first time in a year, she had her own bed, a warm shower whenever she wanted, and a front door she could lock, simple things most people took for granted but felt like miracles to her. But Trump's help didn't stop there. Through the Department of Veterans Affairs, Amanda began attending therapy sessions for her PTSD. The nightmares that had haunted her since Afghanistan slowly began to fade. Talking about her experiences, something she had always avoided, now felt like a release, a weight lifted off her shoulders. One crisp morning, as she walked to a nearby cafe, Amanda's phone rang. The caller ID flashed a number she didn't recognize. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Sergeant Carter, this is James Wilkins from the Veterans Employment Initiative," said the voice on the other end. "We've reviewed your service record and a defense consulting firm is interested in interviewing you. They're looking for someone with your leadership and field expertise." Amanda's heart raced. After months of hearing no, the possibility of a job, one that actually valued her military skills, felt like a dream come true. "When's the interview?" she asked, trying to contain her excitement. "Tomorrow morning," Wilkins replied. "And don't worry, you've got this." Amanda spent the rest of the day preparing. She brushed up on interview techniques, polished her resume, and laid out the new business attire Trump's team had provided. That night, she stood before the mirror, adjusting her blazer. For the first time in years, she recognized herself not as a broken soldier, but as a woman with purpose. The interview was held in a sleek glass building downtown. As she entered, her nerves buzzed, but she straightened her shoulders. She had faced combat, surely she could face this. The hiring manager, a former Marine, greeted her with a firm handshake. "Sergeant Carter," he said with a smile, "I read your file. Impressive service record. You're exactly the kind of leader we want on our team." Over the next hour, Amanda spoke with passion about her years in Afghanistan, how she had led search and rescue missions and trained new recruits. By the end of the interview, the manager's expression softened. "Welcome aboard," he said. "You start Monday." Tears burned behind Amanda's eyes as she left the building. For so long, she had been lost, but now, because one man had stopped and cared, she was finding her way back. A week later, Amanda was back at the White House. This time, not as a homeless woman in the shadows, but as a guest of honor. She stood in the Oval Office, her new employee badge tucked into her pocket. President Trump sat behind the iconic Resolute desk, reviewing a stack of papers. When he saw her, a wide smile crossed his face. "Sergeant Carter," he said, rising and walking toward her. "I hear you got the job." "Knew you would." Amanda's voice trembled slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you, sir. You saved my life." Trump waved a hand dismissively. "You saved your own life, I just gave you a hand. But this isn't the end of your mission. You're a fighter. Always have been. Don't forget that." Amanda nodded, swallowing the emotion rising in her chest. "I won't, Mr. President." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, gleaming coin. "This is a presidential challenge coin," he said, handing it to her. "It's given to people who show extraordinary courage. And that's you." Amanda took the coin, its weight solid and real in her hand. She had faced darkness and despair, but now, thanks to a moment of compassion from the most unexpected place, she had a future worth fighting for. As she left the White House that day, the world felt different. Brighter. Full of possibilities. And though she had once been invisible, now she stood tall, ready to pay forward the kindness that had changed her life forever. Months passed, and Amanda settled into her new life with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since leaving the military. Her job at the defense consulting firm wasn't just work. It was a chance to use her skills to support active duty soldiers and veterans alike. Each day felt like a reminder that she had value, that her experiences mattered. But Amanda never forgot where she had come from. On her lunch breaks, she often walked through the city, passing the very corners where she had once slept. The faces she saw, the homeless veterans huddled in doorways, the worn-out souls clinging to scraps of dignity, haunted her. It would have been easy to move on and forget, but Amanda knew she couldn't. One chilly afternoon, while passing a shelter near Capitol Hill, she spotted a woman sitting on the curb, her thin frame wrapped in a tattered army jacket. The sight sent a jolt through Amanda's heart. She recognized that look, the exhaustion, the shame of being invisible. Without a second thought, Amanda knelt beside her. "Hey," she said gently, "what's your name?" The woman flinched at first, but then mumbled, "Jessica." "I'm Amanda," she replied. "I was where you are not long ago." She pulled a business card from her coat pocket. "If you want help, call me. We'll figure it out. Together." Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she clutched the card like a lifeline. Amanda knew then this was her new mission. Inspired by her own journey, she began working with the Veterans Employment Initiative on her weekends, helping homeless veterans navigate the red tape that had once trapped her. She shared her story in interviews and public forums, using her voice to shine a light on the struggles veterans faced after service. Word of her work spread quickly, eventually reaching the highest office in the land. One morning, Amanda's phone buzzed with an unexpected call. "Sergeant Carter?" came the familiar voice on the other end. "The president would like to see you." A week later, Amanda found herself once again standing outside the White House. But this time, she was more than a guest. She was a symbol of hope. When she entered the Oval Office, President Trump greeted her with his characteristic confidence. "I hear you're causing a stir," he said with a smile. "Helping veterans. Good work." Amanda smiled, standing taller. "I couldn't have done it without you, sir. But there are still too many being left behind. I want to do more." Trump nodded, his expression serious. "What do you need?" Amanda took a deep breath. "I want to launch a national program, something permanent. A network that not only helps homeless veterans get back on their feet, but also ensures no one who served this country is forgotten again." The room fell silent for a moment. Then, with the decisiveness that had become his trademark, Trump stood and extended his hand. "Let's make it happen," he said. Over the following months, Amanda worked alongside government officials and private organizations to establish Operation Homefront. No soldier left behind. The initiative combined housing assistance, job placement, and mental health services into a streamlined program accessible to veterans nationwide. Amanda traveled the country, speaking at military bases and community centers. Her story, once one of hopelessness, became a beacon for others who thought they had nowhere left to turn. On the one-year anniversary of the program, Amanda stood at the podium on the White House lawn. Cameras flashed, and a sea of faces. Veterans, families, supporters, looked on with anticipation. At her side stood the man who had changed everything. President Trump took the microphone first. When I met Sergeant Carter, she was living on the streets, forgotten, left behind. But we don't leave our people behind. Not in this country, he said, his voice strong and unwavering. He turned to Amanda. She didn't just rebuild her own life. She's fighting to rebuild the lives of countless others. And today, we celebrate what happens when one person refuses to give up. The crowd erupted in applause as Amanda stepped forward, her heart pounding with pride and humility. I was lost, she began, her voice clear and steady. I thought my story was over, but one act of kindness proved that none of us are beyond saving. If you're out there struggling, if you think no one sees you, know this, you are not forgotten. You are not alone. Tears welled in her eyes as she finished. And as long as I have a voice, I'll keep fighting, because no soldier should ever be left behind. As the applause swelled around her, Amanda felt a deep sense of peace. She had come full circle, from the cold streets to the heart of the nation's capital. Her life was no longer defined by what she had lost, but by what she could give. And it all began with one moment, one man who refused to look away. The mission wasn't over. It had only just begun.